It's over 9,000!
Welcome, Super Elite Warriors, to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelli, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force, on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time, and I am joined, as always, by my new recruit co-host.
This is the Bekinney. Man, what a mess.
You're telling me. What the hell happened in here?
I honestly don't know. 1 minute I was hooked up to all kinds of equipment, having that Dachio whatever thing.
Dachioplasdectomy.
Yeah, Dachioplasbotomy. Whatever.
Your attention to detail, as always, remains above reproach.
Hey, shut up. Anyway, 1 minute I'm experiencing the absolute worst pain of my life. The next, the machine looks to have exploded and bodies are torn to pieces everywhere.
Everyone except for you.
Yes.
You realize how that looks.
I realize how that must look to you, yes, but you probably heard me spit right before the chaos ensued.
Yeah, filthy habit, that. Spitting right before every stressful thing that happens to you. Just, learn to calm down.
It's not just to calm down, but every time I try and explain it, you interrupt.
But hey, whatever you gotta do to prep for battle, you know?
Anyways, I wasn't even sure if it was going to work. After my Bloodline Annihilation Fist, I thought maybe I'd be tapped out.
Well, you're obviously not tapped out if you're ripping apart expensive medical equipment and murdering dozens of Frieza Force members.
I didn't do this. Look, I can prove it. Just pull up the footage from the surveillance cameras, no doubt placed everywhere.
Cameras? In a medical facility? Do you know how many space laws that would violate?
Oh, right. The laws.
So here we have a bunch of dead people. You, totally fine. And I'm supposed to what? Report that everything is just fine?
Can't you just trust me on this?
I'll have to mull it over. And while I do, let's dive into today's topic. And today we're going to be talking about Fortune Teller Baba, and we'll be talking about episodes 69, nice, and 70 of the...
We are nothing if not the classiest podcast. Episode recap, here we go. Episode 69, titled, Who is Fortune Teller Baba? After defeating RR, as I like to call the Red Ribbon, Goku and the Kame crew return to Roshi's for a little RR of their own. Bulma's trying to fix the Dragon Radar, but she's perplexed when she sees that nothing's actually broken. The last ball just isn't showing up. Bulma postulates that maybe something ate the last Dragon Ball, and it's kind of like shielding its signal from the radar. While they could wait for whatever that ate the Dragon Ball to poop it out, Roshi mentions someone named Fortune Teller Baba, who could easily tell them where the last Dragon Ball is located. He's even got a handy map that shows the location of her home. What luck! Goku's joined by Yamcha, Krillin, and Puar on this particular quest, who view it as an opportunity to get some more training in. Bulma decides to head home, citing the danger of her previous quest with Goku. As the boys fly off, confident that the danger has passed, Roshi makes an ominous comment while still on the beach. Ah, there's the other shoe I was looking for. The boys make a pit stop to refuel Yamcha's jet and get Goku some new clothes. While he's waiting at the tailor's, Goku decides to fly off on Kitoon to bring Upa into the group and give him an update on the whole bringing your dad back from the dead quest. The two of them return, Goku gets his new duds and dabbles a little bit in exhibitionism, and Krillin finds reason to question his sexuality. Don't ask me why. It's the 80s in Japan. On their final approach to Baba's, the boys fly straight into a maelstrom. Luckily, no harm is done, and our boys finally peep Baba's hideout. Upon landing, they're greeted with a waiting line full of tough-looking customers and a ghost usher. After being told to wait their turn, the boys are puzzled as to what would be going on inside Baba's palace. The group in front of them enters, and the boys overhear screams of agony, and they just as quickly return looking an absolute mess. The boys are then creepily ushered into the palace where they meet fortune teller Baba, who agrees to help them find what they're looking for, but the price tag is steep. 10 million zenny. Way to go, Bulma. You could have solved all of our problems really easily. Anyways, short on funds, Baba offers an alternative. Beat her 5 fighters 1-on-1. Looks like we're getting a mini tournament arc. That brings us on to episode 70, titled We Are the 5 Warriors. Boys agree to Baba's terms, except they'll only be fighting as a team of 3, Goku, Krillin, and Yamcha. Krillin volunteers to go first. He faces off against Dracula Man, who is a Muay Thai vampire. It's an embarrassing loss for Krillin. Looks like someone should have been training instead of loafing about. The boys decide to change tack, and Puar and Upa are added back to their roster, and they ask to fight together. The fight between Upa and Puar and Dracula Man kicks off with Upa launching a surprise attack with garlic breath. Kind of weird that bad breath hurts this guy and not the actual sunlight they've been in this entire episode, but I guess we're going to ignore that. Dracula Man tries to switch it up and take a bite out of Puar, only to get a mouthful of porcupine. Finally, Dracula Man tries to fly away when Upa stands with his arms outstretched like a cross, and Puar turns into a giant hand and swats Dracula Man into the lake, winning the match. Next up is Yamcha, and he faces off against the Invisible Man. As you can imagine, fighting against an invisible person is challenging. Yamcha tries flailing about uselessly. No good. Krillin gets an idea and sends Goku off to get Bulma and Roshi. Yamcha tries getting his ass kicked. Still no good. So Yamcha does the next logical thing and closes his eyes. Will it work? Find out next time. And they leave us a nice little cliffhanger.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about Dracula Man and everything in our next episode.
Yes, we're going to focus on Fortune Teller Baba for this one.
Yes.
So,
these
in
episodes,
our notes...
These episodes are just, like, fine.
I mean, yeah, they're a little goofy, kind of like a return to some of the earlier episodes a little bit.
Yeah, I like the second one. Like, once it gets started, I get into it. The first one, episode 69, nice, is just like it's like hitting the reset button, you know, like whoop, here we go off on our new adventure.
Right.
And so there's not much happening.
At least until events. It's like the whole setup thing. Like it's 2 episodes of like setup to get us to this little mini tournament arc thing.
Yeah.
So Yamcha and Krillin are amazed by Goku's feats and know that they need to step up their game or Goku will trounce them at the next tournament. So they offer to help him find the final Dragon Ball. This is the first time in the series we see others who have slacked off see Goku and realize that they need to refocus and redouble their efforts. This becomes a theme with people constantly chasing him in order to smash through their previous limits, or until they give up altogether. Kind of like Yamcha a little bit. Goku never forces anyone. He doesn't actually force anyone to refocus on their training. He trains because to him it makes him happy, and other people see this, and it sort of rubs off on them because they see how content and happy he is, always putting his best effort into training, and so they want to follow his example.
Yep. Now we get into Baba and Baba's Palace. So Baba's Palace itself is the prototypical even, Toriyama walking contradiction. It's alive and dead or undead. It's beautiful and desolate. It's in a living desert and an undead lake. It has trees that don't fit with the environment, and it all just kind of gives it an eerie, otherworldly feel because it's actually between the living world and the spiritual or even after world or undead world. There's actually even like conflicting geometry with it where there's like squares and circles and pyramids, and there's a lot of symbology there too. Just real quickly, like the domes give off female energy and the pyramids male, and you know we're being told through all of these visual cues that we are nowhere. We're at a place between life and death, between reality and unreality. Only the Late or the Laitai, or I forget how we decided to pronounce that, the ring is on a consistent bit of geometry. It's a circle rather than the traditional square Laitai, but it rests upon a circle itself. So this circle upon a circle geometry tells us that this is a special place to be doing battle. And then Obake, the ghost, the ghost, like valet or whatever you would call him, is... I
called him an usher, but yeah.
He is an Obake, or ghost, named Obake, which seems...
Toriyama.
Seems like stereotypical lazy Toriyama, but it could actually be an homage to Fujiko Fumio's manga series, Obake no Q-Taro. I think we've talked about Fujiko Fumio in the past and Obake no Q-Taro.
I think it has come up once or twice, yes.
But yeah, it's a manga series. Fujiko Fumio were like a duo. One of them was Fujiko and one of them was Fumio, and they like just put their names together and they decided, hey, we're Fujiko Fumio. And they created Obake no Q-Taro, and here's where I remember, I know we've talked about them before, they created Doraemon. So that's because we've talked about Doraemon before. But so Toriyama grew up watching the Obake no Q-Taro anime, and in addition to that, the Obake no Q-Taro anime inspired AJ Tsuburaya to name his first sci-fi fantasy series Ultra Q. And we know that Toriyama was an Ultra Q fan as well. So in Toriyama's world, doing these homages to Obake no Q-Taro is acceptable and fun and something that you do.
It seems pretty on brand for him, honestly.
Yeah.
We get more of Goku's classic lack of refinement and decorum in some puns that don't translate one-to-one. In Japanese, fortune teller Baba is Uranai Baba, but Goku keeps calling her Uranai. Uranai is fortune teller, and Uranai means stinky and or incapable of selling things. Also, he uses masculine pronouns when introducing her to the others, so he insults her multiple ways right off the bat. He's basically saying, hi, crappy, smelly old salesman. Some people have assumed that the name Baba is Toriyama making a joke about how old Baba is, because in Japanese, Baba can be used as a pejorative for like an old crone or old maid, but it can also mean like a granny, and it's more likely that Toriyama's just saying she's fortune teller old granny.
Yeah, in Japanese, it's common to refer to like all elders as the names for grandmother and grandfather, and I don't know what those... Sorry, I don't know my Japanese.
I think for granny, I think it's something like Obachan.
Or Obasan, maybe? Yeah.
Or Obasan, yeah.
Yeah. And like you do the same with men and women that you don't know, or that you like, that you kind of know, like that would be like your parents' friends. Kind of like some people, I think, at least do this in America, is like if your parents have a really, really close friend, you might call them aunt or uncle.
Yeah.
And you're like kind of supposed, like that's a sort of tradition in Japan, is you're supposed to do that for like any of your parents' friends. You call them like auntie, whatever, uncle, whatever. Toriyama is probably not using Baba in the pejorative way. He's just using it like she's old lady fortune teller, because that's how you might refer to her in more traditional Japanese as like Uranai Obasan or something like that, you know, where that would give her like more of a lofty sort of, you know, she'd be fortune teller grandmother, you know, but he's using Baba because it's like just granny, like it's almost more familial in that way, because it a lot of times using those kinds of shortenings implies more familiarity and a more familial relationship. So fortune teller characters, though, have a long tradition in Greek mythology and date back thousands of years in China as well. So there's a long, rich history of fortune tellers for Toriyama to pull from. But the most likely inspiration for Baba is from a movie, shocker, the film called The Lost World of Sinbad, which we briefly discussed in our Roshi episode. It was the movie that I couldn't remember the name of because it goes by like several different titles in the US.
Right. Makes sense.
In addition to a horny old hermit character, the hero comes across a witch who dresses almost exactly like Baba is old and haggard like her, is missing teeth just like her, and who is named Baba. So in a further neat bit of series synergy here, the Baba from the movie is played by a man, Toho stalwart Hideo Yamamoto, who Godzilla fans would definitely know. He plays the old man prophet in Shusuke Kaneko's GMK, or Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. That one's a mouthful.
Just a little bit.
But his best movie, my favorite that he's in, is probably Matango, Attack of the Mushroom People. That movie is awesome. If you're into... I hesitate to draw this line with too sharp a pen, because then someone's going to go and watch it and be like, it's not like that. But the closest comparison point I would give for Matango is John Carpenter's The Thing. Where it's a bunch of people who don't necessarily trust each other kind of to begin with, in an isolated situation where things are like getting worse and worse by the minute, and it's all about their trust and their sanity breaking down.
Okay.
And
that's good. That's great.
And there's also then monsters.
You've piqued my interest because The Thing is probably, especially John Carpenter's, is probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, it's one of mine for sure. So again, I don't want to draw that line too closely, because you're not going to see like anyone getting their arms bitten off and things like that.
No, but you're talking like the psychological aspect
right.
of the setting.
Right. So back to this synergy. So Baba from Lost World of Sinbad is played by Hideo Yamamoto, and Dragon Ball, which is a man, and Dragon Ball's Baba is voiced by a man. So we got men playing the female part. The voice actor for Baba is Junpei Takaguchi, whose career spanned decades, including Mazinger Z, One Piece. He was Elder Kai in DBZ, and as you remember from our March Madness tournament, Elder Kai made it decently far.
Respect.
This year. And he also did a bunch of Japanese dubs. Like, if you go and look up Junpei Takaguchi, he did a bunch of Japanese dubs for major American films, such as the Simpsons movie. He did a bunch of Star Wars movies, James Bond, and a whole bunch of Disney movies, too. Just to pick a random thing from his filmography from Japan, check out the movie Dinosaur War Eisenborg, which is this really, it's more of a show, actually, I should say. It's a wild show, though. It combines live action tokusatsu, so there's like dinosaurs like fighting robots and stuff, with anime. All the human sequences are animated. And if you're curious about it, you could check out the compilation movie Attack of the Super Monsters, which is pretty easy to find sitting out. I think I saw it on like Internet Archive. If you're not familiar with that, if you just Google Attack of the Super Monsters and go to video results, it'll be like one of the top results. Prepare to have your brain melted. It's like an evil T-Rex constantly shouting about how... Shouting. Yeah, I said that correctly. About how he's going to like destroy the human race, and then there's these weird animated sequences, and it's just madness. I'm not saying it's good.
Fair enough.
But
that seems interesting.
It's wild. And it's only like, I think the compilation movie is only like 78 minutes or something like that.
Wow, that's really short.
They like just slapped a few episodes of the show together, and they like took the intro and outro. I'd be like slapping 4 episodes of Dragon Ball together. Where if you took out all the intro and outro stuff and all the recapping and everything, you get 78 minutes.
It probably depends on which episodes you're taking the recapping out of.
Well, these ones.
So let's keep peeling these layers back further. Toriyama, as is his way, is inspired by a movie, but that movie was inspired by the Slavic culture known as Baba Yaga, an ugly old folkloric creature who likes to eat children and is a traditional fairy tale character in Russia, Poland, Ukraine, Slavic countries. When people enter her foreboding hut, they are faced with a life and death challenge and must be true to themselves and face their fears or suffer being cooked in her oven. Baba Yaga is the inspiration behind multiple characters in fiction, including the Wicked Witch of the West and Wizard of Oz, the character Baba Yaga, who appears in the Hellboy comics and the newer Hellboy movie. Not the good ones that were done by Guillermo del Toro, but the really recent ones. And is even the nickname for Keanu Reeves' character in John Wick. Of course, Baba Yaga is traditionally antagonistic, and the Baba Toriyama is inspired by in Lost World of Sinbad is one of the main antagonists. So what does Toriyama do? Has her be evil, right? Because, I mean, he just does what everyone else does. No, of course not. Obviously, she's the opposite, and she's going to help the heroes.
Right. Did you see the newer Hellboy movie?
I did not. I got to be honest.
Harbour?
The only thing that interested me about those movies was the fact that David Harbour was going to be playing Hellboy. But I mean, I feel like Ron Perlman did such a fantastic job. I don't know how you could do any better than that.
David Harbour was fine. The highlight of the movie was the, I don't know, 5-minute or whatever it is sequence with Baba Yaga.
Oh, okay.
It's actually quite good. It's like the only part of the entire movie that feels at all like something Guillermo del Toro would have done in one of his movies.
Right on.
And yes, I love the del Toro movies. I really liked the first one the first time I saw it. And then the first time I saw the second one, I was like, oh, that was okay. When I went back to it, I really loved the second one. I love how like stupid and goofy and funny it is.
Yeah, I look at it as like the first one is kind of like getting your feet wet with all of these sort of ridiculous premises. And then the second one is, oh no, we're going to lean really hard into it this time. And if you didn't buy into it in the first movie, this movie is not for you.
Yeah. I love when Abe and Hellboy get drunk together. And they're singing love songs together. That's great. I love that part. But
I love good character moments like that.
Yeah. That's what... And not to get too high on a soapbox like we do pretty much all the time. That's what's missing in like modern day blockbuster movie making in general is those like 3 to 5 minute take a breather, take a breath from the action and do something memorable and fun and quirky and understated with your characters.
Sure.
That makes them likable.
I mean, you look at the major blockbuster releases from Marvel, right? They are often not looked upon kindly for some of their more tongue-in-cheek moments, but for me personally, I feel like that's where the characters really start to shine because they've been thrown in all of these ridiculous situations, but they still find the time to be just weird like normal people.
Yeah. I do think there's a conversation to be had there. You could probably have a whole podcast conversation about how well they've been doing that since probably I'm not sure how far back. Like my argument I could make a genuine argument without getting too far down a rabbit hole here that it's like since they introduced the Guardians of the Galaxy, they have
go ahead.
I was just to say they've struggled to make us really care about any of the characters. This is the reason why I think Phase 4 was a blip and like Phase 5 is not off to a great start here. Mm-hmm. Is aside from the original Avengers, specifically really Tony, Cap, and Thor, those three big ones, they've really struggled to make us care about any other characters except for the ones that we care about because they care about them. Like,
I could see that.
Like Tony and Cap both really kind of cared about Scarlet Witch, so we kind of do. And Tony and Cap, like Tony really cared about Spider-Man, so we do. I'll say the exception there being the Guardians of the Galaxy. They were like introduced completely on their own, and we really like them and care about them.
Did you happen to watch the Christmas special that they did for the Guardians?
I did. I liked it a lot.
I enjoyed it very much.
But yeah, like Doctor Strange kind of got established on his own. We don't care about him a ton, or at least I really. Captain Marvel really got established on her own. Nobody cares. Like, I forget that movie exists all the time.
Well, because Captain Marvel introduces the problem of, like, it's the Superman problem. She's so powerful, she could solve all of their issues with her own strength. So it's like, how do you keep the stakes high enough to where, you know, all the rest of the heroes fighting against it makes for good tension, but keep her out of it because as soon as she appears, all tension is resolved, essentially.
Right. But like, I don't know. I could honestly, I could not care any less than I currently do about any of the characters that were introduced in any of the streaming shows. So I think there's an argument to be said that like even the MCU has struggled with falling into a lot of the pitfalls of blockbuster modern day blockbuster filmmaking.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I think modern day is like within the last 5 years, I feel like this has happened and gotten worse.
My personal theory is that the pandemic kind of really messed with things in Hollywood, especially with the way they have to film stuff.
It messed with the other big thing. It messed with is like it invited in way more think tanking and like tinkering with movies, like what movie was it? I can't remember which one. I think it would have been Jurassic World Dominion. They said it's like they screened it like 12 times for test audiences and like reshot it after every set of and re-edited it after every test screening, and like they focus group these things to death.
Yeah, what's the old saying? If you were to build a horse by committee, you'd end up with a camel.
And that's a decent segue, at least back to Dragon Ball, where because Dragon Ball has always been the vision of just one person,
it does seem a bit more cohesive.
Even if that person is making it up as he goes along.
Which, to be fair, that would take a lot of skill.
You know, that's what Toriyama does, though. He's like, this happens, and then that. But like, hey, it is more cohesive, and you can always tell when something is made by like one person, and it's one person's vision as opposed to being committed. So to bring us further back to our topic, so Baba she's kind of the first character that we see, and some of this is spoilery, I guess, but like, I don't know, do you guys not know?
Do we need spoiler warnings for like a 30-year-old anime at this point?
Right. And we'll try not to spoil things too much, because I think the whole point of our podcast was to say, hey, if you're a casual fan or a newcomer, come and listen to this show and find out like what is behind it and why it is popular. And so maybe there are some people who've been following along with us. God bless you for not running ahead, because I would not be able to stand our pace. We've been doing this for like a year and we're on episode 70. I'd be on like episode 300.
I think we're doing all right.
But she's the first character who really walks into the realm of the dead. Not just like spirituality that we've become accustomed to in Dragon Ball with like people harnessing their ki and magical hermits who live forever and fly around and stuff like that. She is the first person who reaches into the land of the dead and pulls out spirits. So I think, how do we feel about Dragon Ball adding ghosts and an afterlife concept to its milieu at this point?
Considering how much of mythology from like every culture has some kind of dealings with the afterlife in some way, I feel like it's kind of the next logical step, especially now that we are dealing with trying to bring Upa's father back. So really, it was started by Goku promising to bring back somebody from the dead, which is unheard of at this point, at least within the canon of the story. And now we're starting to get introduced to characters who, in fact, have a hand in the land of the dead and have now proven that some of the less savory aspects of the afterlife can be brought forward to be used in the real world.
Yeah, I kind of hadn't considered that it is like this sort of natural progression because of the Bora and Upa thing. I was almost leaning into like, hey, this is how Toriyama manages to keep it fresh despite being somewhat familiar. Like this is a tournament essentially, right? A little mini tournament, but it feels fresh because hey, we've got a whole different spin on it, right? It's spiritual and spirituality, and it's like it's the afterworld and the afterlife, and there's that element to it.
See, my headcanon was that in the earlier chapters, he makes Goku make the claim that he'll bring Bora back from the dead, and then immediately in my head was his editor going, okay, cool, how's he going to do that? And then this entire storyline is Toriyama scrambling to try and find an excuse to bring somebody back from the dead.
But no, I like, I mean, it's hard. It's weird because it's hard to envision Dragon Ball now as it exists without a prominent afterlife.
Absolutely.
It's funny because we don't even get this. Doesn't the Baba stuff and really Dragon Ball as a whole doesn't ever get into the mechanics of what the afterlife is, really. It's not until the Z portion of the story.
When Goku actually dies.
Right.
I get the feeling that the reason for that is probably because, again, Toriyama's doing things, making decisions with the story, and then retroactively having to explain them.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I would not be surprised if, and as I think as we go through and we get to these points, I will do our due diligence and check in on this if we can. I would not be tremendously surprised if Toriyama intended for Goku's death at the hands of Piccolo in defeating Raditz to, spoiler alert, to originally be the end of the story and like have it be, oh, Piccolo's going to feel so bad about killing him that he turns good. There's your story. That's Dragon Ball.
I think for me,
I would not be surprised.
It's kind of the same for me. I think his intention, though, instead of Piccolo, was for Gohan to take over.
Well, that for sure, like when we get into the Cell Saga, was something he wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it's
along
fairly
the way,
obvious by the Cell Saga. I'm talking though, like I think his original intent for Z was it to be a Gohan-centric story, and I think what happened was he probably killed off Goku, and fans probably weren't super happy about that, and he was forced to bring him back.
That knowing what we know at this point about Toriyama, that would not surprise me. It would not surprise me if he either wanted to just end it there, and he's like, oh, and he like even told his editor, oh, the main character's dead, guess I'm done. And he's like, no.
God, I hope that's how it went down.
Because we know Toriyama's been trying his hardest to not work the entire time.
That's true. We know that. Yes, he's legendary procrastinator, that man.
But no, it's weird. I can't picture Dragon Ball without the heavy afterworld and ghosts and things like that. And it's really introduced here, although it feels so natural because we have been spiritual all along, right? We've been like I said, we've had hermits flying through the clouds and people harnessing their ki and to take it a step further and say that there's ghosts it's not like that's like a natural progression.
Sure. I also think it's pretty interesting how given how there's like the flavor of Buddhism throughout a whole bunch of this, that bringing people back from the dead as core of a mechanic as it becomes in the show later on, that it's straight up just like resurrection like Jesus as opposed to reincarnation like a lot of Buddhists believe.
Yeah, that is interesting. That when they were like, "Oh, I'm going to bring your dad back," it's not like your dad's spirit in like a newborn's body or like that would make sense, right? Like what they do with Majin Buu at the end of the series with Oob.
Yeah, exactly.
Who just remembering that character exists just now makes me realize maybe we should throw him into our March Madness tournaments.
I mean, he is technically part of Z. So, makes sense to me.
But here like I said, I forgot that character exists.
I'm sure there's plenty others we've forgotten about.
There were definitely a bunch that we intentionally left off, but
we do leave. Is Launch part of our bracket? I forget.
Yeah, Launch is on there.
Okay. Because I was going to say, we forgot her, just like Toriyama did.
We'll have to just eventually just take her off without mentioning it.
We'll just phase her out without saying anything. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then when we do what we want to be our last episode before we'll take like a 14-year hiatus and then come back, we'll have her pop up for a brief second.
That makes sense.
But only in our YouTube video, not in our podcast episode. Not in the canon. Brand. Yeah. Not in the canon of Final Forum. But Baba's a interesting side piece character, right? That I never really clock that much when she shows up, because I still I get it for the purposes of this story, and she can help you find things. I get a little bit confused on how she kind of keeps coming back, and what the purpose of her continues to be, other than she does bring about some really cool moments, like when she brings Goku back and you get the moment when he meets Goten for the first time. That's a really great moment. Or the really great moment that is facilitated by Baba in Super, where Goku simulates the fight.
That's one of my favorite moments.
So, I don't know, maybe she has become just a cheap nostalgia pop character, but I do think I guess she's used infrequently enough and off to the side enough that it doesn't become irritating, maybe? Is that right. Is that why it kind of works, and also I don't really even clock it?
I mean, that's possible. Me personally, I feel like she's criminally underused, especially given how much shenanigans with the afterlife happen later on in this show. So, yeah, I feel like she could have played a very important role in those adventures.
Yeah. I do think her relationship with Roshi is really interesting, and I wouldn't mind seeing she's the only person that can make him feel some shame, actually. Other people chastise him all the time, but he's always just like, ha ha, that's me. When Baba is like, you missed my birthday, he's like, I'm sorry.
I definitely get a very sort of domineering older sister vibe in their relationship.
Yeah.
And it would have been fun to have gotten a flashback episode like the one a while back where we went to Roshi's past, to kind of have something similar for Baba, but just kind of showing what their relationship is, maybe a little bit more. They could have easily tied it into, resurrecting people and stuff. But again, missed opportunity.
We're just giving out free ideas for filler episodes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If we see these episodes at some point in the near future, we won't at all consider legal action.
That'd be awesome. I would take a small check.
I wouldn't even take a small check. My name in the credits would be pretty cool.
Someone's got to keep the lights on this podcast, man.
I thought we were getting funding from the Frieza Force for this.
We need it to be Funimation.
Maybe we can get them to animate our podcast.
But no, she's an interesting character. I watched this dubbed, as I do with Dragon Ball. I prefer dubs. Do you recall, because did you watch it subbed?
I do watch it sub, yes.
Do you recall, did she have a crack about you didn't help me move mom?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
She has a line in the dub that's like, you didn't help me move mom last weekend, or something like that. And I'm picturing Roshi and Baba's mom, and it's like
Roshi with Baba's hair.
It's like the human equivalent of that SpongeBob episode with the chocolate. You know that one?
Yes, I do.
It's like, hello, young lady, is your mother home? It's like a skeleton. They're selling chocolate.
I'm picturing that, but it's like Baba's hair and Roshi's beard.
So yeah, that's That's kind of all we got on Fortune Teller Baba. It's not the most in-depth stuff. I mean, there's a lot there.
Kind of like how the character was treated themselves. So
there's some stuff there, though. I mean, I would encourage people. I never want these episodes to wind up being like 3 hours long of us just like giving a lecture, you know. But I'd encourage people to look into like symbology with like squares, circles, and pyramids, because there's definitely a lot more there that I just was like, yeah, it's, you know, male and female.
Well, you know, we can't do everything for everybody. We got to let them have a little bit of fun on their own.
And the Baba Yaga stuff, like, you know, if any of that piques your interest, I mean, yeah, definitely feel free to fall down a Baba Yaga rabbit hole, you know.
Just don't end up on the moon.
Or just a John Wick rabbit hole, because I like those movies. I like Keanu.
I don't think there's a person who doesn't like Keanu Reeves.
I don't either.
Well, listeners, if you're one of those people, let us know.
So that we could send the rest of the world after you. Okay. I think I've decided your fate.
Uh-oh.
For now, I believe you. While you were droning on about, I don't know, something.
Hey, you are the one that wanted to do a podcast right now. Besides, didn't you say these are, like, important to Lord Frieza somehow? Shouldn't you be paying attention?
You don't bring your A game every time. Sometimes I drift.
That's very hurtful.
Yeah, you should have picked up on that aspect of our relationship by now.
Oh, trust me, I have. I just keep hoping against hope that if I say it enough, you'll start to be aware of it, which might actually be the first step towards change.
Change my ass.
What was that?
Nothing. Anyway, I listened to your Scouters recorded playback while you were talking, and I didn't catch much of anything that sounded like you could have killed all these men. Just you screaming like a baby for me to come sit with you during the dachioplasdectomy, a loud explosion, and that was it until you were screaming like a baby for me to come to your rescue again.
I was not screaming like a baby.
Well, yeah, okay, sure. It was more like sobbing, but the point is I believe you.
If you're going to think so lowly of me, I'd almost rather you not believe me.
Well, too bad, because after we fought in battle, I know you couldn't do this.
Hey, I almost killed you. We blew up the better part of an entire planet. I totally could have done this.
Is that an admission?
No. Fine. I was begging for your help, okay?
That's all I ever needed to hear. Listeners, we'll take our leave here. Do I really believe Bekinney? Did I believe him all along? I just wanted my ego stroked. Will he wind up going crazy and killing more people in the future? Find out next time and help us achieve our final forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kit. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.